2 Maccabees, chapter 15. When Nicanor learned that Judas and his men were in the province of Samaria, he decided to attack them in utter safety on their day of rest. But the Jews who were forced to accompany him said, "By no means should you so cruelly and barbarously bring destruction. Show respect for the Sabbath day, which he who sees all things has honored with holiness above other days." Then the thrice sinful man asked if there were a Lord in heaven who ordered the keeping of the Sabbath day. When they declared, "It is the living Lord himself, the ruler in heaven, who commanded the keeping of the seventh day," he responded, "I am a ruler on earth. I command you to take up your weapons and complete the king's business." Nevertheless, he was unsuccessful in carrying out his heinous plan. In his utter vanity and arrogance, Nicanor decided to put up a public monument of victory over Judas and his army. But Maccabees never ceased to trust the Lord and fully hope that he would help him. So he encouraged his men to have no fear of any attack from the Gentiles, but to bear in mind how help had come to them from heaven in times past. Now they should anticipate the victory the Almighty would give to them. He also exhorted them out of the law and the prophets, calling to mind the battles they had won, making them more eager to fight. Then, after he revived their courage, he gave his commands and at the same time emphasized the Gentiles' faithfulness and their failure to keep their oaths. So he issued each of them armor, not so much of the surety of shields and spears, as with the encouragement of courageous speech. Then he inspired them all by telling about a dream, a kind of vision worthy of believing. The vision he saw was this: Onias, who had been high priest, a true gentleman of modest and noble manner, one well-spoken and from childhood formed in all that pertains to virtue, was praying with hands outstretched for the whole nation of the Jews. Then, in the same manner, another man appeared, distinguished by his gray hair and glory, and having about him a certain astonishing and majestic preeminence. Onias then spoke, saying, "This is Jeremiah, the prophet of God, a man who loves his brothers and prays fervently for the people and the holy city." Stretching forth his right hand, Jeremiah gave a sword of gold to Judas, and as he presented it to him, he addressed him as follows: "Take this sacred sword, a gift from God, by which you will strike down your enemies." Encouraged by Judas's words, a man so good and able in stirring up virtue and courage in the souls of young men, they determined not to plan out a campaign. Instead, they would wage war bravely at once, deciding the matter with hand-to-hand combat with all manliness, because the city, the sanctuary, and the temple were at risk. Their main concern was not first for wives and children, or even for brothers and relatives. Their greatest fear was for the consecrated temple. As for those who remained in the city, they were distressed and worried about the conflict in the open country. Everyone was now living in suspense over the outcome of the war. The enemy was nearby. Their army was prepared for battle, and their elephants were strategically positioned, and the cavalry was deployed on the flanks. Maccabees noted carefully the great masses before him, the variety of their armaments, and the savageness of the elephants. So he reached out his hands toward heaven and called on the Lord, the wonder worker, for he knew it is not by weapons alone, but by the Lord's decision that victory is won by those worthy of it. Thus he cried out to him in the following manner: O Lord, in the time of Hezekiah, the king of Judea, you sent your angel, and he killed as many as 185,000 in the camp of Sennacherib. So now, O ruler of the heavens, send us a noble angel to go before us, spreading fear and trembling. By the strength of your arm, may those who speak blasphemy as they come against your holy ones be struck down. With these words, he completed his prayer. Nicanor and his men marched ahead with trumpets and battle songs, but Judas and his men joined the enemy in battle with invocations and prayers. They fought with their hands and prayed to God in their hearts, and struck down at least 35,000 men. So they were deeply gladdened by God's visitation. When the battle was ended and they were marching home with joy, they recognized Nicanor in full armor, lying dead. With tumultuous shouts, they blessed the Lord in the language of their fathers. Then Judas, who was in body and soul ever the chief defender of his fellow citizens, and who from youth maintained goodwill toward his countrymen, commanded them to sever Nicanor's head and arm and take them back to Jerusalem. When he arrived there, he called his countrymen together and stationed the priests before the altar. Then he sent for those in the citadel. Before them, he displayed the head of the defiled Nicanor and that slanderous man's hand, which he had boastfully stretched out against the holy house of the Almighty. He cut off the tongue of the godless Nicanor and announced he would feed it to the birds bit by bit and hang up the rewards of his folly opposite the sanctuary. Then everyone lifted their eyes to heaven and blessed the Lord who visited them, saying, Blessed is he who kept his own place undefiled. Judas then fastened Nicanor's head to the wall of the citadel, a visible symbol to all present of the Lord's help. So they all decreed by public vote never to allow this day to be unobserved, but to celebrate it on the 13th day of the 12th month, called Adar in the Syrian language, the day before Mordecai's day. This is the way things turned out for Nicanor. So from that time on, the city has been controlled by the Hebrews. Thus, I will end my story here. If I have written well and made my point in the narrative, this is what I myself desired. But if it was done poorly and is just average, this is the best I could do. For as it is disagreeable to drink wine only or water only, whereas wine mingled with water is pleasing and delightful and brings greater joy, so also the written style of the account delights the ears of those who read it. This then shall be the end.